hit record, and so we can get right into it. Kamal, do you want to lay the ground for what we're going to explore today and what you've been up to the last week?
Yeah, thank you. What I have is very short, um, and I think it's just going to be a conversation, really. um, so I'm actually going to show Pospey's architecture. Let me just figure out where it is first. um, but yeah, I've been thinking about this idea of a shared marketplace, and what we realized when we were talking about this shared marketplace is that it could kind of be like this marketplace that we all kind of send things to. And what Pospey had said kind of really sparked something for me. When you're posting, let's say someone's on Basin and they want to post some biofertilizer. When that person's posting, they can decide to post to just a small community or a larger community. And that kind of thought sparked like, wait, that's exactly how Hilo works. And since Holochain, Holo bought Hilo and then open sourced it, and that we're trying to move Hilo to Holochain, why not just use what they're doing there? Because it's the same architecture. And so I'm just gonna like show the architecture, and then I'll show what I mean by the, well, I'll just kind of, this is an architecture-based question. So, perfect, thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna share. You have to let me share, Sid. Okay, thank you. Okay. So to review what we talked about last time, so let's say this is Basin. Basin is an app that biodigesters can use. It's very specific, so we call that domain specific zones, and then there'll be like a UI element to that. So that's kind of how we would handle things. We would connect to some Holo REA stuff, maybe a planning layer, maybe an observation layer, maybe agents. And then this whole conductor for Bob is also stacked with an external marketplace app. And so that would be this entire marketplace with all of the Holo REA agreements, etc. And this kind of gave me an aha where I was like, okay, so if we're actually trying to create this shared marketplace, why start new? When you look at Hilo, so we've been working a lot with Hilo lately. There's this idea of a network, and then within the network sits communities. And then if you go to a community, within that, you have projects and events. There's also, a map as well. And so the architecture, I think the architecture might be in the network. Let me see. The architecture is pretty simple, where you have the network, communities and projects, right? The main kind of point is let's say I'm within Hilo, and Hilo is a project within circular food economies or bioeconomies. And then within that, I'm part of an entire circular economy in the Seattle region, right? But let's say I want to sell my biodigestate from here to the next city over. Then all I need to do is follow a pattern like this where networks can speak to other networks. And that's exactly what Hilo is designing. So you can actually discover other networks. So what I simply did was, this is how it's designed right now. This is the digestate post that the startup guy actually posted. And all I did was I just added, instead of just projects, events, members, and now maps, I just added a marketplace. and it's exactly like Facebook. Facebook has the same exact marketplace structure. It's the exact same architecture and UX as well. And then there could be a whole other element of adding for sale products or whatever it might be. It doesn't mean this is the correct user experience. It might not be a marketplace. It might just be that for sale could be in there. And this is something that Hilo wants help with, and they need to figure out how to design this, right? So what I was thinking was, well, what if we're trying to figure out how does Hilo and Holochain come together? So what if the way we come together is a marketplace, is this shared marketplace? And we use Holo REA and all this stuff, you know? I think that's the extent of my thought, really. I haven't done much more than that, and I really want to put it out there for conversation. So yeah, if there's questions, let me know, but I think that's what I have.
I feel like possibly will have a bunch of things to say about Hilo. Like you've been following this for a while, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting software to comment on because there's a lot of people involved in it, and they haven't always had the same opinions. So I try to qualify the opinions I share with the people who gave them to me, maybe as I go. But mostly, I met with Edward and Lauren, who's the lead dev. Edward's the founder. That was the start of last year when there was the Holochain Intensive in Australia here. And I connected again recently through Tibet Sprague, who's part of the Terran Collective, because they're who's working on it now. So that's the current relationship of stewardship, is that Edward let Hilo go and open sourced it. Terran have taken over development of the current Node.js client server system in the UI, and they're going to keep iterating and improving Hilo 1.0, I guess, is the current version. And then there's also, I think, there's just a team within the Holo team who have taken on the development of Hilo 2.0, which is just a rewrite of the Node.js backend on Holochain. And so then you'll end up with two different Hilo backends and one front end that talks to both, in a similar way that you have like Holo REA and Commons Pub as two alternative implementations that both talk through BF GraphQL. And if you dig into the Hilo, that Hilo Evo code base where the UI code is, you'll see there's a lot of GraphQL and stuff in there. They have their own schema for a lot of it, but it's pretty decent. Yeah, so you talked, I guess the one topic here is the network stuff, and you talked a little bit about that and the way they have it set up. That has been an ongoing conversation, I think, with everybody that I've touched base with Hilo. Is like, how come we have this 3-tier setup? Why is it like global network community? And Edward had his reasons for that made a lot of sense at the time, but I mean, certainly the way I'm intending Holo REA to work is to be fractally composable and not be limited to this kind of explicit hierarchy of information. Yeah, because you want to be able, for me, I want to be able to kind of break things down into sub projects within organizations and have them as their own independent networks, and have organizations that are composed of other organizations and have all that stuff working, fairly seamlessly. And yeah, many people have spoken about, yeah, we should do that with Hilo at some point, but we're not thinking about it as like a big priority. And I think there's probably still some discussion they want to have as to whether that makes sense for them or adds too much complexity. Oh, interesting. 404 on Hilo Node. There should be. I'll try and find the link anyway. It'll be in the Hilo Zoic GitHub org anyway. You should find it. Maybe Hilo Node is actually. Yeah, that's the URL I'm looking at. It might be private.
Oh yeah, you have to join. Are you talking about the GitHub
Hilo
thing?
Node. Yeah,
Oh,
no, it's working private tab for me. Works fine.
I was gonna 404 at the building Hilo page on Hilo.
Yeah, you have to join.
Oh,
You have to. there's a different link. I'll find that link.
Oh, you want the invite link? Yeah,
Yeah.
my bad. Yeah, anyway, so there's one thing there, and I guess that echoes of the general conversation and or the general theme of conversations with Hilo, which has always been that Hilo wants to be, you know, approachable and user friendly and serve the needs of communities, and that's sort of the primary guiding light for them. Whereas Value Flows kind of wants to be that, but it also wants to be like tax invoicing software and enterprise resource management software and a whole lot of other things that are quite a lot more complicated. So I think it's likely that Hilo will never really want to provide the same suite of functionality that we're aiming for. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, Terran seem to be sort of adding more and more stuff as they've taken on more development. So I could be wrong about that. The other thing,
I asked Tibet, I was like, are you guys thinking about a marketplace? And it's not on the immediate, it's on the long-term vision. So it might be a good time to have the discussion.
yeah, the other interesting thing about, you know, Hilo as a marketplace, quote unquote, is that it already is a marketplace, really. Like every community has discussions, offers, and requests, and that sort of makes the market of exchange. But I can see, you know, it being useful to have like a marketplace as a separate piece in the sidebar that goes and pulls listings from all of the communities that you're involved with, maybe, and starts to show you them to you, a bit like the events part that they've built in now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the other thing is very much Edward always has tried to keep Hilo as just offering kind of the core part of community communication stuff and doing it really well, and trying not to overwhelm it by building in, you know, like he's like, yeah, I don't think we really want project management features, because if people want to do project management, they'll just create a new discussion, link a Trello board, and you go over to Trello to do that, you know. So there may be some change in ideology down the, you know, that's maybe starting to unfold now. I don't know, in terms of Hilo building in more of those kinds of features, because I think seen stuff about some project management things not that long ago. The other thing I would say about Hilo in terms of the value flows, and I'll paste, there's this issue in the about the node backend in the GitHub. And I just noticed this around the time when I jumped into that building Hilo community. But they were adding a resource post type to the backend. And now when you go to Hilo and you're in a community, there's actually offers, discussions, requests, and resources. And you can see from this issue thread that the resources in particular caused a lot of discussion and confusion in people. And really for me, it's about the temporal nature of the way that they're conceptualizing resources, because they've got this form where you go in and you go, oh, there's a resource in the community, and you add it. But then there's another issue, which, well, not an issue so much as a discussion. I think it'll be this one. I'll put it in the chat as well, so that when people do get into that group, they can check it out. But there was also people reflecting on, hang on, I gotta wait for the thing to load, sorry. But reflecting on the way that time inputs are handled between different post types, and like, you know, should resources have a time limit for their availability? And if resources have a time limit, shouldn't offers and requests have a time limit? So very quickly it started to kind of look like everything was more or less the same content type with a different name. I think maybe the only difference now is that resources make you put in a location, but nothing else makes you do it. Yeah, so yeah, this thread was about how to display post for the time frame, and you know, the resource ones brought up all this stuff of like, okay, well, what if you put in a resource to say that there was a pecan tree, but then someone chopped the tree down? Like, how do you know that the resource is still there? And so the UI starts to now prompt you and say, like, you know, is this resource still active? And they work-ish, I think, but they're kind of band-aid fixes to me, because the problem for me is that you're entering a resource as if it exists as some fixed truth outside of time, you know? Whereas if they were working on value flows as a kind of it's kind of a way of thinking almost as much as it is a protocol. But if that was the default mode, then you wouldn't be entering resources. You'd be entering events as observations to say that you saw that the resource exists. And there's just a different imposition about opening up a web page that says there's a pecan tree in the orchard versus opening up a web page that says Bob said that there was a pecan tree in the orchard 5 weeks ago. Like one requires more maintenance than the other, I think. So that's kind of the other part of what they're doing. And to be honest, they haven't been too keen on diving. Like people there have toyed with value flows and researched it from time to time, and they talk. I see them talk about it from time to time, but no one's really dived into embracing it as a way of thinking and using it as an implementation. And actually, I kind of applaud them for that, because this stuff is coming from the school of thought of accounting and ERP and enterprise resource planning and resource management and stuff. And they're coming from the school of thought of community management. So, it would be a disservice to that ideal to then go and think in a business sense, not a businessy resource flowy sense to begin with, I think. So it's interesting just seeing how it develops with them, and if they do end up converging or if it goes in a different direction. I'll be very interested to see over the long term. And I would also say that the way that they're doing things, because value flows is an upper ontology, it's all completely convertible to value flows. It just might look a bit weird because, if it was me making the conversion, I'd be converting Hilo's resources into value flows economic events that said that a resource existed at the time the post was made. So you get some kind of weird terminology between the two, where we call some things resources and they have a very different idea of resources and so on. But it's all representable, and even if you just want to look at Hilo for UI and bring in some of the UI stuff that they're doing, then you don't have to think about any of that ontological difference at all. If something looks like a thing for listing a resource and you want to do it through Holo REA and a value flows API, you can wire it up to fire the data in that format and do your own translation. It doesn't matter. So I think it's, and it has always been a hope and dream of mine that Hilo's UI would start to be used in these kinds of apps and toolkits, and that maybe there's a way we can converge some of these projects together.
Yeah, I presented this idea to Kiki as well. And so we've been talking about, how does the Holo food talk together here? And one thing that seems to be pretty consistent is people love that there's a shared UI framework that people can use. And Holo, a lot of their files are open, Hilo is, a lot of their files are open, so you can just take their Figma files and work from them. And as a designer, it's really encouraging to have shared frameworks from a visual standpoint. And so that, I think, is another benefit of it. And I had another question on how Hilo is being built on Holo. Are you saying it's mostly only on the back end, that we're not rebuilding something new? Like we can't just add more components to it?
You can do whatever you like, right? Like you could take the Hilo app and, like the HoloChain implementation that the Holo team are working on, I'm not sure as to the status of that. And I think it's kind of like some very rough prototyping has been done that may not even be current anymore. That's a much longer term project. So don't expect that there's any HoloChain version of Hilo for a very long time. But certainly feel free to take the UI and connect it to whatever data source you want. And because it's got a GraphQL layer in the middle, hopefully that is reasonably easy. And hopefully, some of the views are separated out from the logic and things in a way that makes it easy to import. But I haven't actually used it in a third-party project yet to test it out for myself, to be honest.
Got it.
So would you say possibly with VFUI, we don't really need to be limiting ourselves with Hilo?
Yeah. I think there's maybe a designer on the Commons Pod team that's done a bit of stuff, but I am really craving like a really good designer, an UI designer particularly, to go over a lot of this stuff, think about what a unified style and framework looks like. But my concern with VFUI is more like doing things as simply and as lightweight as possible and making them as themable as possible so that anyone can style them to fit their own theme if they want to bring it in.
Yeah. Do you want to share? I'm not sure if the group here knows as much as they should about VFUI. Do you want to share a bit?
I think we might have done a fair bit on it in another talk. I can if people are interested, if that feels good.
Maybe, maybe a couple lines.
Some rough thumbs up. Yeah, I might show the. There's some stuff about Hilo in this too. This is the Kumu map that I was. I think, did I show this last week? No, maybe not. Maybe it was in the cast recall. Anyway, I've been doing a little bit of ecosystem mapping, trying to connect the dots on all the different software projects as a start anyway, because software projects are pretty deliberate about their connections.
But I would say, like, technically Kamal's problem could be solved using just basic VFUI, right? Like there's no need to.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a question of which UI framework is it's at the most maturity you want to play with. So this is what the part of the ecosystem that I've mapped so far anyway is starting to look like. With Holo REA, value flows GraphQL, and then where are we? This is the generic marketplace that I'm starting to build at the moment. Here's Basin's app over here, and SeedShare and Shiro I don't know much about, so it's kind of just sitting there. But Hilo is still sitting all over here in its own place pretty much. So when you add in the intended dependencies of things that we'd like to see connected, then Hilo starts to come in because you're talking about using Hilo UI and SeedShare as well as Basin at the moment, as far as I know, are the two conversations that I've heard people talking about. Potentially bringing value flows UI into here as well, if possible. But there's a couple of steps that need to happen on that because value flows UI, the goal is, and this is me starting to build it. This is the marketplace app, and I'm going to sort of genericize components and pull them out of here as I go. But these are all being built as Svelte components at the moment, which means that they're mostly compile time driven. Like this will turn into a browser web component when it's compiled. And I've just been kind of working on some things to make sure it's all kind of neatly encapsulated and deals with dependencies nicely and stuff. You can see a lot of them have a queries file that sits adjacent where all the GraphQL is that connects them to the backend. So this one's got a few queries that it fires for creating proposals and intents and stuff that manage the listing to a marketplace.
Hey, Pospy, I think maybe you lost the visual you think you have.
Oh, do I? Yeah, I'm looking at code at the moment. Is that
Yeah, it's
see it now. See it now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, and there's some sort of diving into the Svelte libraries and their tooling now. This form library one, what I'm using uses schemas to validate input and etc. etc. But anyway, the point is to have some nice, ready to use UI components come out of this that people can drop into their other projects. And I don't think I can stop my screen share.
No, it's
off.
It's off. Could you share a bit, like when you talk about UI components, could you share like how granular that goes? Like, let's say we were to strip off the components of Hilo. What does that mean? Like, does that mean we can just take the communities bit, or are we talking like even more granular down to?
No, I'm talking about all the way down to. I mean, the ones I've been pulling out at the moment are like the nav bar and the way that it highlights links when you're on different pages and stuff. So yeah, at every order of composition, and probably somewhere in there, like if Hilo's further ahead on some of those little atomic pieces of UI kit, like some of these request and discussion badges on posts and little styling people's faces all overlaid as little icons for who's participating in threads and things, like those are all really useful, reusable components that I'd like to be able to
Mm.
plug into stuff.
Mm.
Probably what the extra bit with VFUI would be is setting up those components so that all their interfaces to them
Yeah.
speak value flow, so that, rather than an array of profiles and
Mm.
profile image of people's names for a little list of people, would actually be a list of value flows agent records, so that it
Mm.
just comes in the format. But those would be the simple things, probably.
Mm.
I'm not sure if you said this, but is the like Hilo.com, it's actually using VFUI at present?
No, they didn't Hilo UI, their own UI kit.
Oh, okay. So this is in the future, like parceling things out potentially.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know that they have much interest in using any of our UI kits, but I'm thinking more the other way around, of me pulling in some of their specific UI components into our UI kit.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
And quite possibly the same with what Colin's probably doing as well, because even though they're building in this weird Elixir server-side rendering framework, they are trying to compile at least the views to React components. So I might be bringing a bunch in from that project as foundation as well.
Mm. And I think this is just my perspective from my conversation with Bosby, we've been talking about VFUI just being a foundation for anyone who wants to spin out basic front-end tools without too much effort. And so I honestly think like it might be fun to start building marketplace using some of this. I don't know. It could, as opposed to just re-engineering Hilo, is my sense. Yeah.
What does VFUI look like? How do I see like the visuals?
Yeah, I don't have a storybook for it yet, so I'm just scaffolding and playing with architecture at the moment. I haven't really started on the components themselves.
Got it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think the reason why I was thinking about Hilo is because it's beautiful and already a lot of it's done. That's kind of why I was thinking about it.
Yeah,
I guess is it component based, like, or what is it the right architecture needed to build upon? Do you feel, or
I really can't be sure without diving in and looking at the code, to be honest, but I think so. I mean, if it's not, it's Apache licensed or MIT licensed, isn't it? It's not so you can just kind of take
commercial, yeah.
So you can take pieces and just hack at them if they're not quite flexible enough. But it is pretty good. Like when you look in the code base under the components folder, there's they've got like button and checkbox and comment card and all these things kind of separate out. So it's all fairly separately componentized. And I suspect they've got something in there. Yeah, there's a storybook in that repo as well. So you can spin that up and it'll give you a nice browser UI to look at all the components and toy with them and stuff. And that's your foundation. And yeah, there is something like that coming with that VFUI, but I just haven't wired up all the things that I want in there yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start having conversations with the farmers we are making fertilizer for, and we're hoping that will lead to a lot of feedback about what kind of UI they enjoy working with. And there's already been a little bit of pushback, or at least concern, from the biodigester people that it's going to be hard to get people onto a new platform, like a new social media kind of platform to work with. And I think we really only have one chance at that. We don't want to say, okay, get on Hilo, and then, okay, never mind, get on our version of Hilo, and then never mind, get on. So yeah, it's something we're thinking about is interfacing with farmers and having a space for them to use it as a mutual aid hub. But so we're hoping Hilo can be that in the meantime. But yes, it's there's only so many try this out, try this out, try this out.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Feel like that's the general theme for the world at large. Like we only have so many more tries left with people because I think everyone's tired of. Oh, there's this. What's this? What's the word? Like, yeah, that people are just tired of trying too many things. So I feel like the next version of whatever we want a larger group of people to migrate to better be it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mm,
I think my roadmap on this development too, just to make sure it's clear for you, like I'm probably not going to touch VFUI until after the marketplace app because I want to.
mm,
I'm already, I've barely started work on. I'm already in the process of combing out the commonalities and putting them into their own
mm,
modules so that they're reusable. But I still feel reluctant to put that into a UI kit and package it up until there's at least one app that's using it that sort of ticks the box to say, yeah, this was a sensible way to build it.
mm,
So that's probably the order I'll go in. But if in the interim you want to integrate things and make them depend on stuff inside another code base, I found it's called PNPM, pnpm.js.org. And I'm using that instead of NPM or Yarn now to manage my projects. And I found it makes things a lot less painful when you've got, 10 different things that all depend on each other and you want to just try out this thing you're working on and test it in this other app, but you don't want to have to release a node version and package and do all that stuff to get there. Anyway, so yeah, there's some better tooling to handle cross project dependencies now, so that makes things a bit easier.
cool. Is there anything on the marketplace architecture, Kamal, that you want to touch upon?
No, it was mostly the architecture that possibly had already shown.
Mm,
It was mostly just, I think that, this marketplace idea is generally new for us. And when we started to think about it, it just, basically that basin becomes a little more invisible, which makes more sense. And that's fine with us. So then it was just like, okay, so then if we have this shared marketplace, what does that mean? And it means a bunch of different folks have to build it together. So that's kind of, yeah, that's basically what I had. And then, obviously once you start thinking about a marketplace, reputation matters, of course. I think I'm just like thinking like, how do we not rebuild the wheel? That's kind of where I'm going with it.
mm. Yeah, and so you guys are speaking with Kiki and Victor, right? And they are on board with the marketplace as well?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked to Victor much. I think Victor's been on vacation.
Mm,
But he was on the call this morning at the EU-US Hackalong, and Kiki presented what they're working on and talked a little about URIs, and then we went a little bit into the architecture, and then I presented a little bit about this concept of high-low.
mm,
But I think it's relatively new for most folks, so it's still, it's more of a seed than anything.
got it. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to have. I would love to. I think I want to learn more about what we're doing, what holochain people are doing with high-low right now. I think that's an interest of mine. I'm on the high-low channels, but I haven't seen much about high-low on Holo in our holochain forum. So I'm just curious. Maybe there's a need to start a discussion or continue one. But just curious where people are with it.
I'm just looking at the Hilo Holo DNA's repo, and the last commit was June 20th, 2019. So it has been dormant for a while. I think they're much more focused on getting Holo hosting and all the supporting apps out the door than anything to do with Hilo at the moment.
Mm. Yeah, and I think as an entrepreneur, I'd say last year around this time there was a lot of excitement because they just bought Hilo and it was being touted as the UI solution for everyone, or at least like that solves a big problem for a lot of entrepreneurs. But because it's
Yeah,
moved to the back burner. Sorry?
that touting didn't last very long, I think.
Yeah, I
In,
think.
in that space, there was already, it might have been Philip, but someone from Holo was building their own UI framework in addition to Hilo UI. And I'm not quite sure what happened to that.
Hmm. But yeah, it kind of moved to the back burner and has not been heard of since. Or like you said, there's like it's there, but no one's really exploring what they can do with it within the Holochain.
And I think that's what I'm wondering is could Kiki, Victor, and us start that? Should we pick it back up and test it? That's, I guess, it's there.
Yeah, why not? I mean, I've been thinking the same thing with there's some work someone did on geospatial functionality in a DNA just to map locations, and that one seems like it'd be pretty easy to resurrect as well.
Yeah, maybe, I guess. I feel like it can solve a lot of problems, like basic problems for entrepreneurs who are just trying to get like simple marketplaces or simple conversations going. And honestly, like it might even serve as a forum substitute for projects itself. Like everyone who's building a project on Holochain could actually use that. I don't know, in 6 months from now. Sorry?
I found there's a Hilo DNAs in the Holochain org as well, and that one's last commit was December 19th, 2019. So Holochain's been doing stuff since. But it is an archived repo as well, so that also says to me it's been parked.
Yeah. Anyway. Anything else that's coming up for people? Lynn? Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
Well, I was just going to say one thought about the whole high-low question is, would it make sense to think about it as the high-low stuff is providing social networking facility, and then Holo REA is providing the economic networking, and that's like a cleaner dividing line and would be really useful to have that stuff interconnected, but it's a little bit cleaner dividing line than trying to figure out the little bits of the economic stuff that Hilo is kind of putting around its core social functionality. I don't know. It's just a thought.
I think
like if you wanted to resurrect,
I think that's kind of how I see it, Lynn, is that, like I just showed a marketplace option. So in that marketplace option is the marketplace we're talking about. The offers and all the other stuff that's community-based could happen still on Hilo, but then we're just in this separate piece of this. I think that's what you're saying. Is that true, Lynn? Is that
sort of. Yeah, it'd be sort of a matter of figuring out where to most cleanly connect them. Like offers, I would think of would be Holo REA, but if somebody wants to say, oh, I've got questions about your offer, can we talk? Now we're in Hilo, which has that social networking facility, all the discussion stuff. But I don't know because I haven't looked at it seriously, so I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure we could also map it. I'm sure Posby is right, and we could map it. So.
Yeah, and that maybe seems the more sensible to me because then it's sort of. I mean, you probably want it to be at least go from Hilo outward, but maybe coming back in as well. But when people are doing Hilo listings, it's already broadcasting some REA data out as well, so that people can pick it up on other marketplaces. And that's the translation version.
Well, I see Sam posted something about ShareTribe, and so I used ShareTribe for quite a while and tested it on our first version of this whole thing that we've been working on. And the main difference I saw was there's this idea of just informal networks trading with one another and just sharing, but then there's this formal piece where you need to buy something and distribute it, you know, and that actual exchange of, of either it be monetary exchange or mutual credit or whatever it might be, I think that's where there's a potential of a differentiation.
Yeah, I was mainly just sharing the podcast because it's really interesting. They're talking to people that have built two-sided marketplaces and how you validate your idea and create a business model and stuff like that. So I don't know if any of you know, but I'm building a two-sided marketplace called Loconomics, which is taken from the States. So these questions are, you know, how you get your supply and demand together at the same time and how people have done it in the past. You know, you want to make sure that you've done as much research as possible so you don't just fall flat on your face when you try and start going live and stuff like that. So yeah, we actually, so as part of the platform Co-ops Now course, last week we were supposed to set up a share tribe site for our co-op, but it wasn't really relevant to Loconomics, but I went through it anyway. And it seems kind of like an Etsy kind of thing, but quite basic. So like there's like I come from the enterprise world, and there was no like variable shipping or, you know, different locations, different tax rates. So it probably fits a market of like you're trying to just validate your idea and get it out there and see what happens and then build your own maybe. But in terms of like what you're talking about and being able to have like really customized logic and creating your own, you know, value chains, it doesn't really suit that at all. But the podcast is great. Like they go through so much stuff, and it's all you can all backed up by all the research that they've done on different sites. So yeah, I recommend it if anyone's getting involved in a two-sided marketplace, and even if you're not a two-sided marketplace, you probably are, because most people have customers and most people have some kind of supply. So both are important.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the marrying of these two things. It's like Hilo gives you the top level conversational network. I think that's kind of and REA is sort of the top level economic network. But I think our needs for social networking, Bob Haugen often talks about merging the social and economic layers into one. I think what we need goes much deeper than just these kind of linear chat streams that are fairly independent from the economic data. Like we really need, I mean, essentially the threaded comments zone that I threw together as a learning exercise around this time last year. Something like that, so that you can have a conversation about every economic event that's logged and every commitment that's made and you know, every satisfaction between them. Like literally have a conversation about everything that happens in the economy separately and attached to that specific thing. So yeah, I think there's already plans in the works for how that works that have nothing to do with Hilo, but there's still kind of a need for something like Hilo as a social space to begin those economic interactions from, if that makes sense.
It also reminds me of similar problem that Loconomics have, is that Loconomics platform is basically how to do the transaction between a service provider and a customer, but there's no, like the problem you've got, there's no kind of like platform to how for the service providers to communicate and make decisions when they're using the platform. So it's not more like it's not more a discussion for the transaction, it's a discussion amongst people that are generating the transactions for them to organize in relation to the platform that they're using. It's almost meta, another level above that. So I don't know. I couldn't register for Hilo. Well, I could register, but then I can't see anything, so I don't know what it's providing. But it feels like it's providing that kind of social communication layer, which to me feels like Lynn says. To me, it does feel very different. But I suppose it depends what you're trying to answer. Are you trying to answer the communication around each transaction, or are you trying to answer the communication around the sort of global problem of how transactions happen?
Yeah, Lynn,
Might even be both. I think
Mm.
Pospey's right there. People are going to want conversations around specific pieces of transactions. But yeah, Sam, I wanted to ask you, since now I'm finally hearing what you're doing. I'm sorry I missed it before. So do you have like a link for Loconomics, and what are you writing it in? Should it be part of this conversation?
I hope one day it will be part of Holochain, because I see the benefits of having agent-centric transactions just open up many more sort of like different business models that don't exist at the moment. But to give you a bit of background, Loconomics was a platform in California, well, San Francisco to be more specific, that is a platform co-op. So I don't know if you're familiar with those, but basically a cooperative platform. And they open sourced it. So I've been chatting with them, getting it set up. It's not actually got its own, well, it does have a URL, but I'm not sharing it with the world yet because it's just running on my local machine and would fall over at any moment. I mean, if people are interested, I'm happy to give a demo. But we're based in Melbourne and we're trying to get set up locally first, just to narrow down the market so it's something we can manage rather than open up to the whole world all at once. So yeah, if people are interested, I'm happy to give a demo. I just don't want to share links out that might just fall over any moment. And it's for gig workers so freelancers, gig workers trying to just flip it on its head, because the current models are all about, you know, people bidding on jobs and race to the bottom and no power over how the algorithms work and all that kind of stuff. So this is flipping it on its head. So you're, as a gig worker, you've got a profile and people can search for you, but you're not having to bid on different jobs that are in your neighborhood. And especially with COVID, there's going to be so many more people desperate for work that the people, even now, people are bidding on jobs for, it doesn't even make financial sense. They're just trying to get their profiles better, trying to get some more likes and more, you know, ratings, reputation, so that then you can actually become, you know, have a profile that people are going to trust. So anyway, yeah, I'll stop there. But if people want to have a bit,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to.
Yeah, Sam, I'd love that at some point. I would love to see what I've heard of Loconomics a ton. I've, you know, geeked out on the platform co-op stuff for quite a while, so definitely interested in hearing about it, actually seeing it as well.
Do you want to explore it with? Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. I'm just teasing. I'm saying Loconomics demo next week.
In Holochain.
Yeah.
Can you share, Sam? Can you
message me? I'll put my email address in the chat if you want to message me and take it from there, maybe.
If you could share a website or something, that would be great, just because I have no idea what, I've not been part of this before, so I would love to see something before then.
Yeah, I'm happy to share the website URL with people if they're interested. I just don't want it to be like on a forum or something where it's kind of like we're not at that level of testing yet. Mm-hmm.
You're muted, Kamal.
Still muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it geo.coop as the, no, that's not it. That's something else. Never mind. but yeah, I would love a demo. I was, I think possibly said, could we do there we go. Could we do a walkthrough what you guys are doing on this, even though it's not built in Holochain at some point? I would love to still see what you're doing.
Yeah, I think we could do an exploration here on the Hackalong next week even, and see how it could intersect with the marketplace. Up to you, Sam. What do you think?
Oh, is that a question with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I don't mind sharing what's on my local PC. I can share. Yeah, that's a good idea to share, like my local host, whatever. I'm happy to do that and just run you through what it works. It's quite a lot there. So I remember I shared it with you previously, like just the
when
list of
started.
API requests. Yeah, probably about a month ago. The list of API requests, and there's like 150 API requests. So it's not a small job to migrate such a thing to Holochain. So that's why I haven't really attempted it. I've got a lot of things to get on with at the moment, but yeah, I'd be definitely interested to hear people's feedback on how it worked with REA, because one of the things I'm excited about REA is it actually does most of what you might need to do to move it to Holochain anyway. And if you can just use it in the JavaScript single page app and just tweak whatever controls that REA allows you to do, then it might solve most of the problems that we would have moving to Holochain. So I'm just waiting for POSP to fix all that, and then I'll get on board.
No pressure, POSP.
Yeah, let's chat about that. We can figure it out offline. Any other thoughts? Lily, welcome to the Hackalong. Always good to have you here.
Sorry to be late. This is a
not
little
at all.
challenging time for me.
Not at all. No, good to have you here. Yeah, any closing thoughts before we wind up for today? Anyone?
I just wanted to mention the Hackalong we've been doing it in the EU and US. There's a little bit of a check-in in the beginning that like people can kind of address some of their questions or whatever. I wonder if that might be helpful in this group, just so people can hear a little bit more about what others are doing and just build a little more community.
That is,
I love the demonstration stuff as well. So just putting it out there.
That is a good idea. I think we had those when we started, but I got the feeling like people appreciated us like wrapping up in 60 minutes or maybe 75 minutes. And sometimes I wonder with check-ins, that's basically, I would say 15 minutes more. I would love check-ins. Like, I think it's great, like you said, to build a certain amount of cohesion in a group. Maybe you can try it the next week and see how it goes. Just to hear on what everyone's up to and how they're feeling or what they're coping with in terms of Holochain. That's a good suggestion. Cool. Yeah. Lily or Greg, any quick thoughts on what happened, what went on in the Europe Hackalong? Kamal mentioned Kiki did a little presentation, but if there's anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah, we talk about, there was actually a lot of discussion about what POSP and the group here have been presenting, just how the different projects are sort of coming together. I guess POSP is doing a lot of work. It's integrating Shilo, C-Share, and Bison, different projects. So definitely, the group earlier today is definitely interested in seeing how the architecture pans out. And yeah, there are different folks that are working on sort of writing up different papers. we had a session earlier, somebody from Holo team actually talked about Holo port, about Chaperone on the browser side, and mention of Envoy on the server side. So I think Greg, I don't know if you want to chime in on that. I think you're doing that right, writing that paper, and then there's some papers being written up on some patterns.
Oh, so that stuff on the Envoy and Holoport stuff is actually going to be shared soon? Is that what you're saying?
Oh,
Yeah,
there was the
hey,
session earlier. Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
No, yeah, Sid, I did it. So yeah, that one that Joel did,
Yeah.
talking about the holo fuel or the holo hosting.
Mm-hmm.
I went through and I just kind of time stamped and wrote out notes, kind of question
Oh,
and answer, wrote out what the
nice.
question was and the answer was. Yeah, so it was a real good exercise, and I feel like I have this like niche knowledge on that because so I did a draft. I can post it in the chat.
Yeah,
here,
please. Yeah, please. I
put
think
it in
that'd
the
be
forum.
great. That would be great.
Okay, cool.
And then there was some discussion further out about capabilities. And yeah, so I think so there's some papers being written up on that, and also on patterns, couple patterns that's being written up. And I'm sure once that's written up, they'll be shared across.
Cool.
And yeah.
Awesome.
And I just want to mention that Kiki and I have been kind of using the front end of Hilo a little bit just to kind of think about our ideas, since the files are free and it's already kind of out there. So we've just been using it very much just visual kind of architecture standpoint. So just FYI, we've been working on that.
Sorry, one more thing I want to mention is that Josh and Thomas are working on this identity thing. I think they're looking at the conceptual level of the DID, decentralized identity system.
That is
I think
interesting.
yeah, that's probably going to touch on different things. So IoT is one of the areas we've been looking at, and DID definitely apply to that space as well. And then I think they also came up with what in one of the slides in Kiki's presentation earlier today. So I think that's probably a core sort of common layer that's probably going to cut across different projects, I would imagine. So,
yeah, and some amount of intersection with the reputation as well. So that reminds me, I need to get in touch, like resume some of the conversations on that.
Yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, we're talking about maybe like some of these commonalities probably need to have follow-up discussions. Probably would be good to kind of focus on different spaces. And identity being actually one of the horizontal layer, probably. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Very cool, guys. Thanks for the good conversations. And maybe next week we will pick up the loconomics bit and start with a few check-ins. Cool.
Thanks, Sid.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah. See you next week.